Well, the Game Awards was something, and it had the first next-gen system reveal with Xbox something, now known as Xbox Series X. Still, for Nintendo and Zelda fans, this year's awards were quite a disappointment to say the least. We didn't get another peek into Breath of the Wild 2, but also there was not a single first-party announcement presented by Nintendo. That's true, Nintendo of America President Doug Bowser was completely invisible at any of the stages, after receiving for Masahiro Sakurai the best fighting game for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Keep in mind, that was during the pre-show. Besides that, all we got was a short trailer for No More Heroes 3, a game we already knew was coming out in 2020, and yes, that one was also shown during the pre-show. In fact, the only Nintendo Switch exclusive revealed during the awards itself, and not the pre-show, was Bravely Default 2. Not getting any new footage of Breath of the Wild sequel was disappointing, yes. But as we proposed in our video about the possible reveal of Breath of the Wild 2 at the awards, this was always a possibility, as Nintendo could simply not feel confident enough to show anything about the game yet, and save it for a different time when they actually have more significant things to reveal about the game.
What was shocking though was the lack of any first-party Nintendo World premieres, not even a reveal of the last DLC pack for the first Smash Fighter Pass or a different first-party world premiere reveal. The absence of Nintendo's first-party world premieres by its current president at the Game Awards was odd and unprecedented in the 5-year-long history of the award ceremony. As a result of this absence, the lineup for 2020 seems quite barren and empty after Animal Crossing in March when it comes to Nintendo's first-party titles, and we can only hope that we don't have to wait until next year's E3 before we get any big reveals at all. But likely we will not have to wait, as there might be a reason for Nintendo's behaviour during the Game Awards. A new PR strategy in the wake of the next generation, which is already underway after the reveal of the Xbox Series X. 2020 will mark a new situation where the gap between the Switch and the next generation systems will be so massive that it isn't even a point comparing. Nintendo knows this well, so perhaps they had first-party world premieres including Breath of the Wild 2 planned for the Game Awards, but decided to pull them out from the show after being informed about the reveal of the Xbox Series X. If so, then it could be that Nintendo made a very simple decision. From now on, no longer reveal or bring trailers of big first-party titles to external events like the Game Awards, and instead keep them exclusively to their Twitter, YouTube, Nintendo Directs, and E3 Nintendo Directs.
This is quite possible, and with an approach like this, the absence of Zelda at the Game Awards could mean nothing for whether the game comes out in 2020 or 2021. What will have an impact though is the first Nintendo Direct of 2020 in January or February. The Smash Bros. Ultimate DLC Pack 5 reveal will likely be announced here or before that. But what about a new Breath of the Wild 2 trailer or first gameplay reveal? It is quite possible that with a new marketing strategy, it could be there. But if it will not be present, does this mean that the game is going to be a 2021 title? In our opinion, very likely. But there's also a small glimpse of hope for a 2020 release, even without Breath of the Wild 2 in the first Direct of 2020, but it obviously depends on the game being playable at E3 2020. Then again, the marketing campaign for Breath of the Wild 2 could be similar to that of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, where everything of trailers and gameplay premieres is pushed in almost every Direct from the first full-blown Nintendo Direct of the year, through the E3 Nintendo Direct, and in the second half of the year dedicated Directs, leading up to the launch of the game. This strategy could still make a 2020 release possible, but there is another possible piece to the equation that complicates things, namely the possibility of a Nintendo Switch Pro. At first we believed that Metroid Prime 4 would be the perfect title to launch a Switch upgrade, but then its development was restarted and handed over to Retro Studios. If only there was another graphic-intensive Nintendo first-party AAA title which couldn't reach 1080p 30 frames per second on the regular Nintendo Switch. Alright, Breath of the Wild. With Breath of the Wild 2 being even more ambitious, we could be, with the regular Nintendo Switch, in for more Korok Forest framerate drop areas, and what better to counter it than with a Nintendo Switch Pro, which could run the game without any hiccups in at least 1080p and hopefully 60 frames per second. Sounds awesome, right? Yes, until we realize that revisions usually come with around 2-year gaps. Nintendo Switch in March 2017, Nintendo Switch Lite in August 2019, and Nintendo Switch Pro in the first half of 2021, it is possible that Breath of the Wild 2, just as what was the case with the regular Switch in March 2017, is planned as a system seller for the launch of the Nintendo Switch Pro. If this revised version of the Switch is not planned until spring 2021, then we will not get Zelda until spring 2021. You see, Zelda Breath of the Wild after the first delay had a planned release in 2016, very likely holiday 2016. 2016, but then to coincide with the launch of the Nintendo Switch, it was pushed once again, this time to March 3rd, 2017. It is possible that history might repeat itself with a Nintendo Switch Pro, though obviously that depends on whether it will materialize or not. If there will be no Nintendo Switch Pro and we see a trailer for Breath of the Wild 2 in the next Direct, then 2020 will once again be the most likely release year. It all depends on the stage of development the sequel currently is in. Then again, I believe that a holiday 2020 release might not even be the best release moment for Breath of the Wild 2. Why? As Nintendo can take it easier next holiday season with a Mario title when the next generation PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X drop. Price cut the regular Switch for the holidays and then bring us Breath of the Wild 2 with Nintendo Switch Pro in March-April 2021 before E3 2021. In the end, by doing it this way, the game would only release a few months after the 2020 holidays, which, let's be honest, was by far the earliest point we could expect the game.
A late 2021 release is also possible, as we cannot forget that Breath of the Wild 2 will easily be the most ambitious direct sequel to a Zelda game Nintendo has really ever made, in which case a 2021 release, whether it's spring or holiday, simply seems more realistic. But wait there, Conrad, what about Majora's Mask, which was developed much faster after Ocarina of Time? Whether you like it or not, you can't deny that any Zelda game was the result of a bet between Shigeru Miyamoto and Eiji Aonuma. An excellent but at the same time rushed Zelda game which had to cut corners to make the 2000 release window. Majora's Mask was developed in barely a year's time due to the smart reuse of assets and Ocarina of Time's engine. A lot of people have been making comparisons when it comes to the development of Breath of the Wild 2 and Majora's Mask, including us. However, it could very well be that Nintendo aims to make the sequel grander than Breath of the Wild, especially when it comes to its story, as well as add even more locations to an already huge world and naturally proper temples and dungeons. In which case, a 2020 release might be a little too ambitious for a project of this scale. Breath of the Wild took 5 years to develop, and while a significant portion of this was attributed to the creation of the physics engine, there was still a lot of time needed to finish everything else. From world building to story, cutscenes, gameplay and so on, the sequel will obviously not take 5 years to complete, we hope, but with a bigger and deeper story, more traditional dungeons, which in and of themselves take a longer time to create, and additional locations added to the world map, it will still be a pretty huge undertaking.
We need to remember that development of Breath of the Wild 2 started around November-December 2017. In other words, only 2 years ago, and a development cycle of 3 years in 2020 might simply not be enough for a title that is expected to surpass Breath of the Wild, the most ambitious Zelda title ever made. We can't also forget that Zelda games are notoriously prone to delays, and Nintendo wants to avoid the same mistake they made with Breath of the Wild, which was delayed twice. The first release window we got for the game was set as early as the holiday season of 2015, which, well, let's be fair, would have been impossible. If you ask us, we would rather see Breath of the Wild 2 turn into the game the Zelda franchise deserves, than to have it rushed out as a game with expansion-like proportions. It is unsure exactly when the sequel started development, but it is likely that it started sometime around or right after the Champions Ballot was completed and released in December 2017, meaning that when the reveal trailer dropped at E3, the game was already in development for at least a year. And all we got at E3 was this small 1.5 minute teaser. This indicates that Nintendo is taking their time to actually make something significant, rather than some leftover DLC ideas compiled into a new release. It is hard to say exactly when we will see anything new from the game, but it will certainly be shown again before the end of E3 2020. Historically, Zelda is reserved for big events like E3 and the Game Awards, but has also been showing up at Nintendo Directs here and there. The biggest one obviously being the January 2017 Nintendo Switch presentation. Then again, we might even end up beginning the next Nintendo Direct with a trailer akin to Link's Awakening's reveal with gameplay in the February Direct of 2019. Since the game has already been revealed at E3, it is not too crazy to think that they will show us more before E3 2020. Now, it will most likely be shown at E3 as well, which will likely be when we get the title for the game and maybe even release date, but it would be nice to learn a bit more about the game before that time.
But what could have been the reason for almost total absence from Nintendo in general? Couldn't they at least have shown something? What were they thinking? Well, Nintendo might have actually made the conscious position to not reveal anything. Not because they have nothing to show, but rather that they want to keep these announcements for the upcoming Nintendo Direct. This might also explain why, with the exception of accepting award for Best Fighting Game on Sakurai's behalf, Doug Bowser, president of Nintendo, did not hand out any awards or seek any attention for world premieres during the awards. This could have very well been a deliberate move by Nintendo. They probably expected that Next Gen could show up during the awards, and they made the decision to rather control the impact of their own announcements in the Nintendo Directs instead of being over overshadowed by something even bigger, like the reveal of a brand new system. Looking back at it now, we might have overestimated the overall value Nintendo puts on the Game Awards. While they have been showing quite a lot of important stuff at the awards, especially regarding Breath of the Wild, they have at the same time been distancing themselves from bigger events over the years, which is why the Nintendo Direct exists in the first place, being able to show new stuff without having to rely solely on the few big events that take place every year. We will refrain from making any hard predictions for next year for now, as Nintendo has shown to be quite unpredictable as ever, but let's just say that getting a new trailer for Breath of the Wild 2 at one of the upcoming Directs is not as unlikely as we would originally think.
Same goes for holiday 2020 or early 2021 release for the game. Well, the new year is almost here, so we'll find out, and if you haven't already, leave a like on this video, subscribe and press that shiny bell for all notifications to not miss any of our upcoming Breath of the Wild 2 and Nintendo Switch videos. Or you can check out our Inside Breath of the Wild 2 merch in our fan shop on Teespring. A big thanks as always to our patrons, which we hope you can join on patreon.com/commonrealm. Thank you for watching, and until the next upload, why not check out one of these two awesome videos.